Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm Julian. If you haven't heard of me before, I'm one of the instructors at Blood and Iron Martial Arts. And basically, I'm here to do a Q&A and all that stuff to help promote one of the events going on in HEMA, which is in Phoenix. And basically, all proceeds and all that go towards Streetlight USA, which is an organization that helps rehabilitate victims of child sex trafficking, which I think is a mildly worthy cause. So,
Mildly. Yeah, just a little bit.
mildly. Yeah. So essentially, what's going on is we are sending down our head instructor. He is going to be trying to raise as much money as possible for this kind of thing. So I'm trying to bring awareness for all of that good stuff. And all the flights and expenses he's paying himself. So all donations are going directly to the charity. And then if he wins anything, which is highly likely, he tends to do that pretty well. He's going to be raffling off all the prizes and all that. So all the money proceeds towards that go towards charity again. So yeah.
And also, if anyone uses the super chat and donates that way, I'm also going to put all of that towards the charity as well. Well, technically 50% because YouTube takes 50%, but the rest is going towards the charity. So
Does YouTube actually take 50?
they do.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
That's
crazy. It's even more than from the regular ad revenue. So
that's
yeah,
rough.
yeah, it is. You would think, if it's donations, then they would maybe leave that alone or not take half, but they do. Anyway,
That's a little rough. All right.
well,
Uh
YouTube
yeah, it's true. It's true. They haven't been giving themselves the greatest name of all time lately.
for sure. Okay, so I have the super chat window here somewhere, I think. If not, I shall add it in a moment. Let me see here. Yeah, I think that got lost in the process somewhere. Because as usual, we had to fiddle around a little bit with the settings here and there because, if you don't spend an hour beforehand setting everything up, then something is going to be off. And even if you do, it's still going to be off.
Yeah,
So,
we've been at it. We've been at it for about half an hour now,
mhm.
and we
Yeah,
just got here
before
by the
that, I've
skin of our
already
teeth.
been at it for at least an hour, half an hour before that. So every every time it's a major pain in the butt. But anyway,
Mm, mm.
I think I can grab that pretty quickly here. There, super chat, new window. There it is. Yep, there's already one there, which we'll see in a moment.
So someone's asking how you can donate without giving half to YouTube. Essentially, if you go to our channel, Blood and Iron Martial Arts, we've
Yes.
got a video there that covers everything. And then in the comments and all that, there's an actual link to the GoFundMe, which I can actually link up because I should be prepared for these kinds of things because that's what good guests do, which is totally not what I did.
Well, we were pretty distracted with getting just the video stream going.
That is true. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to drop this in the chat real quick. But this is the GoFundMe towards the charity right off the bat. So far, we've raised 685, which is pretty solid. And then, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, and that's in this case, it's definitely the best thing to do. Go there directly rather than, I mean, you can still do the super chat because it allows you to ask a question, and the super chat, as usual, is prioritized because the regular chat is a nightmare, as usual. And yeah, but
Seems pretty okay,
if
though.
if you if you mainly want to put money toward a charity, then it's better to go there directly because then 100% goes there, and YouTube doesn't get its claws on there. So
Exactly, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so one question here. What's your opinion on cutters? Do you find them totally obsolete if you have a nice folding knife?
Cutters, is it a sword or?
I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm not sure what do you mean. Maybe box cutters. I'm guessing probably
Oh,
means
maybe.
something like box cutters. Personally, yeah, I kind of find them obsolete if you have a good folding knife. Although there are folding kind of box cutters as well. I mean, with a box cutter style blade in a
Yeah.
folding knife format. So there's that too. But I don't know. To me, it's like if you have no idea how to sharpen a blade, then yeah, those cutter blades are pretty handy because you can, if it gets dull, you can just buy a new one, which I find wasteful, and I prefer to actually sharpen things. So
Yeah, but I mean, that being said, if your job actually does involve opening boxes, then a box cutter tends to do that a little bit better.
depends
Like if
though.
you're,
Some folding knives are really good at that. I find especially hawkbill blades tend to be really good at opening boxes,
yeah,
but
fair enough.
it's personal preference, of course. Um,
Yeah, I imagine the price difference also makes it different for a bunch of other people at that point too, though.
yes, that's true. I mean, box cutters are pretty damn cheap. Some folding knives are also pretty cheap, but box cutters, I think, are hard to beat. Anyway,
Can you hear
so
the car alarm going off, or is that magically silenced?
that is magic. I can't hear it.
Nice. All right.
That's helpful. Anyway, so another person asked, "How are you?" And well, I'm okay. Been pretty busy lately as usual, and yeah, I've just recovered from wrecking my back in the gym, so I've had to take like 2 months off of HEMA practice because of that, which sucked. But it's getting better, so there's that.
How'd you manage that?
Deadlift with less than
Oh,
perfect form,
mm-hmm. I
and
keep hearing the magic about that.
yeah, it's I really despise deadlifts and squats because I don't have the form perfectly down. But the only reason why I keep trying them is because it's the most fundamental exercises ever. Yeah. Anyway, how have you been, Julian?
I'm doing okay. School is beating me down a little bit. I'm in school for sports sciences and kinesiology and all that. And then, so most of that's going okay, but I have this statistics class, which is not going well because I might not be the best math person ever. And my teacher might not exactly be the best of all time either. But other than that, I'm going okay.
Hmm.
Not much to complain about.
All right, good. Someone saying here, do body weight. It's a lot safer. Sure, but it's also not as well. It depends on what your focus is. If your focus is endurance, then body weight is fine. If you're trying to build strength, then it doesn't quite cut it unless you, I guess, if you wear a backpack with heavy stuff in there. Anyway,
But then at that point, you're also then just doing weight
that's
training.
not body weight anymore. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but at the same time, at least you don't have the bar to contend with. In fact, I've actually here and there tried to get into front squats, which are really awkward to get into, but at the same time, it seems a little easier on the back. Anyway, someone says here, I always hurt myself doing lunges. Yeah, I guess lunges can be, if you don't not do, especially if you're not doing them quite right, they can be a little hard on the knees, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean everybody's built a little bit differently,
Oh yeah,
right?
for sure.
So different exercises just won't work for some people as
Absolutely, yeah.
opposed to others and all that.
And sometimes you just have to find something else if it really doesn't work. I mean, it's with squat and deadlift, I find it a little hard because what's the alternative? It's not that much. Leg press doesn't do as much as the squat, and
I find Romanian or sorry, Bulgarian split squats actually work really well for me.
hmm,
But I've got weird hip issues because I fell down a
hmm,
fireman pole when I was a kid. Like, well, at the playground.
hmm.
So yeah, that was a good time.
Yeah, I could try that, I guess. And also, lately I've been doing Romanian deadlifts, which seems to work a little better. I mean, it goes more on the lower back and the erectors, which I think that's kind of the problem. My spinal erectors are weak, and also it's good for grip strength. I found because if you just keep holding the bar the entire time without putting it down, holy crap! Like on the last rep, it's like the fingertips are clawing into the bar and it's almost falling down. So
Yeah,
that works
a
pretty
lot
well.
of people ask me how to improve grip strength, and I'm like, just if you do enough weight training, your grip strength will get there. It
Yeah.
doesn't become an issue.
Hmm. Exactly.
So
Eventually, you'll. Hmm? Sorry.
there's a good question here. What's your opinion on studying numerous manuals versus focusing on one?
Hmm.
The main thing with that is if you're looking for a lot of commonalities between multiple manuscripts, then it could work really well to see kind of funnel towards an overall system for yourself. Then it works really well, right? So if you're going through a lot of Meyer, which goes through multiple weapons, and then you start going through maybe Caballero for Italian Rapier, and then start merging some of the constrainment concepts there, then it can really work well to your advantage. But then I find a lot of people who tend to go like, I'm going to study Fiore and do Fiore, and then I'm going to do Meyer and then do Meyer, and like try to like have multiple individual systems within their repertoire. Then I don't think it works as well. I mean, not saying it can, of course it can, but it's better to kind of specialize it all towards something in particular as opposed to separating it all for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. In my case, I find Rapier pretty interesting, but I haven't done it a whole lot so far, and I found if I try to focus on that as well, I'm kind of spreading myself too thin, and then longsword and single hand can suffer a little bit. So I'm kind of focusing mainly on longsword, and that's just if you focus more of your practice time on one weapon or one system, then you can just get more out of it, essentially, as opposed to spreading yourself out. It can totally work. It just takes longer to get to the same level in each of them, I would say. But yeah, in my case, I tend to focus a little more on one thing, but I still like to do Rapier every now and then, just because it's interesting. I mean, what in HEMA isn't, right?
Yeah. A lot of people asking my last name. Yeah, so my family history is German. I don't have my my nice Prussian flag in the background to create controversy this time. But yeah, I was talking to people, some friends, and we were joking that I was gonna then start wearing that flag as a toga and then put the Japanese imperial flag in the background just to mess with as many people as possible. But
that would be hilarious.
It's true. I'd enjoy it. Someone talking about parrying, but then the question got lost, and I have no idea where that is. Is it possible to parry with or against axes, hammers, or maces?
Oh.
Well, it depends what you mean by parry. If you mean like literally stop the weapon with your weapon, it is possible, but they've got mass and energy on their side, right? So
yeah, if you're talking static block, then I don't know. I think of half sorting, maybe. Like kind of try to grab and try to catch it in the center. But it's not something that I personally would want to try, frankly, because that's a lot of impact that you're absorbing there. So I think deflectional parry is probably a better idea.
You would want to set it off, which the word for that is upsetsen.
I mean, deflectional parries are generally a good idea, also against swords, but, there's... to be the block is kind of like the oh shit response. It's like if you...
Yeah.
If you're caught up...
I need something in the way right now.
Exactly. Like if they feint, for example, and then come from an unexpected angle, you're just like, oh crap, I just gotta bring my sword in between myself and their weapon, so... But if you're dealing with something... like a pole arm, or that can just blow right through a static block with a sword. So, so in that case, you actually have to step into it and intercept it and catch it before it's built its full momentum. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed. This is also something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Meyer does talk a little bit about how to deal with a partisan with the staff, and it involves kind of like a deflection parry, but it's only briefly mentioned.
That's also something that can be said about the video I did on quarterstaff and a quarterstaff versus sword. And some people got confused, like, how can you possibly even win against the sword? Or how can the sword be more powerful than the quarterstaff or whatever? I mean, there are ways to deal with it, of course. If you, as I said, if you step into it and get it before it reaches maximum velocity, then yeah, you can possibly pull it off. Also, as I said, deflectional parries, it's, you know, it's challenging for sure, but it can be done.
Yeah, you've got two people of equal skill, one with a pole arm, one with a sword. I'd probably root a little bit more for the guy with the pole arm,
Yes,
but
that's
swords in general feel way nicer to use. So,
mhm.
so you got a couple of super questions here. I don't know if
Okay. Let me
is super chat
pop
like
that
the
back up.
actual
Oh
word
yeah,
for it, or
yeah, it
was
is.
it? Oh,
Mhm.
I remembered something. For both, what are your favorite things about being in Blood and Iron, and what
Hmm.
would you change about it if you could? Also, does Blood and Iron compare to other East Coast clubs?
West Coast, but yeah, and unless he really means how does it compare to East Coast clubs,
Yeah,
which
how does it compare to other East Coast clubs? But yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, we're West Coast, but yeah. Probably my favorite thing in general is there's a lot. I like teaching. Okay, yeah, I like the opportunity of being able to teach in different countries. That to me is
mhm.
pretty damn cool. That I can travel all over the place and then have people want to learn. That's probably something I enjoy quite a bit. What would I change? I don't know. There's, I mean, there's always things you can improve, right? If
Mhm.
I could change something, more space for everything, more space for all the things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably what I would compare it to. How does Blood Iron compare to other East Coast clubs? I don't know. Hard to say. I think that we like to have a lot of cutting focus, which some of the Eastern guys do as well. Well, East Coast guys tend to do as well. Yeah, I don't know. Whenever we meet, we tend to do pretty well against each other. So I think we're pretty fine in that regard. Sorry, I meant West. Other
Hmm.
West Coast clubs. I would say we have a pretty large focus on cutting, a lot more so than a lot of other clubs in the area. I'd say that's one of the biggest differences that we do. What about you? What do you enjoy about the BNI?
Well, a lot, of course. It's you know, learning a practical skill, learning more about, you know, that particular aspect of history. The community, of course, there's lots of awesome people there, and yeah, work, you know, fun exercise. There's, as I said, there's plenty of things to like. Cutting, of course, is also really nice, and yeah, just about everything really. Changing, yeah, like you said, more space would certainly be nice, and also greater variety of weapons would be great. I always want to do like spear and like sword and shield rather than just buckler and all of that. So of course, little in some cases a little difficult to find proper manuals for it. Like for example, spear is almost not covered at all. It's mostly staff, which of course can be applied to spear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Spear and
I
shield, for example, is not covered at all. I've never seen that in any of the manuals. Have you?
Yeah, you have like Rotella stuff, but I don't remember if there's any with spear and Rotella.
Yeah, Rotella and side sword and rapier is
Yeah.
the most common, right?
Hmm.
So it's not as easy to incorporate that sort of thing, but it would be cool, especially also, right, mixed weapons. That's also something that I would like to do more of, which again is tricky because the manuals generally don't deal with mixed weapons, only in a few cases. So there's that challenge.
It can also be kind of tricky in general because if you want to do something like rapier versus longsword, the person in rapier has to gear up fully to be prepared to be hit by a
Hmm.
longsword. And then things like wrist protection in conjunction with the rapier tends to sometimes be a little
Hmm.
iffy.
Hmm.
So there's some challenges there and there.
Yeah, for sure.
There was another one here.
Hmm.
Hello, Julian and Scal. Does sport fencing and or martial arts background make it easier to move into HEMA from what you've seen? So from what I've seen, one of the biggest transferable aspects is work ethic and athleticism
Hmm.
because sports science wise, raw mechanical knowledge of one sport or skill does not immediately transfer to another. Sometimes it can actually hinder, because then you have to unlearn habits, which takes, give or take, roughly 3 times as long as learning something from new. So that can take quite a bit of time. But at the same time, if someone is at high level sport fencing or other martial arts, they've had the work ethic to get there in the first place. So then that'll help a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a good example of having to unlearn certain things is the transition to gathering steps that Blunt Iron is going through right now, right? Because the like advancing and retreating steps, pushing off with the rear foot and taking one step with the front foot and vice versa. That's what it started out with, because, comes from background in sport fencing and SCA and all that, and which doesn't actually seem to be covered in the manuals. They don't seem to actually mention that kind of step. So
yeah, that's the thing Sean Franklin was saying as he was asking around, and I don't think in any manuscript does it actually describe ever an advancing step. I mean, like, I'm sure that's not to say they don't exist. That would also
it doesn't mean
ridiculous.
That they didn't do it. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like you do hear gathering steps mentioned quite a bit, but you never hear an advancing step. So
yeah, and it's not the kind of step where you would think, well, they took it for granted, so that's why they didn't explain it. Well, if they explained the gathering step, then you would think they would also mention the advancing and retreating step if they did that. It's hard to say, but it also, having okay, it just said chat disconnected and then was reconnected. He just got error. Sorry, we encountered a problem. Really? We encountered a problem? That's what we're dealing with now? Yeah, no shit. We noticed that. What? That's just stupid. Yeah, Hangouts just seems to be...
Oh!
Huh? What? Oh,
it works!
I can't believe the kind of crap that we have to deal with here. Okay, then.
Oh, now people have to stare at my goofy Krusty the Clown avatar. Oh, wait, no, there we go. It's live. All right. We did it.
Yes. Wow. That was retarded.
Hooray, Google.
Yeah.
Absolute kings of tech.
Yes. I mean, if we'd used something else, it would have screwed up too. You can rest assured.
This just happens every single time.
It does.
It's unbelievable.
It really does. Okay.
All right, cool. What did I miss?
I don't even know. I was so busy trying to fix this that I couldn't even look at the chat. Well,
let me scroll through some
of the juicy bits of people losing their shit over this, which is understandable, to be fair.
Oh, that was a nightmare.
Yes.
Yeah, I basically just kept clicking the link over and over and over again. It just came, we encountered a problem. I'm like, great, that's not my problem, though.
Well, it kind of is in the end, but it's certainly not your fault. Yeah, it's amazing the ways in which, well, I was going to say Google Hangouts can screw up. It's not like Skype doesn't screw up, and well, to be fair, Discord,
Skype just didn't work.
Discord doesn't usually screw up. I have to say that. I just couldn't get it into XSplit.
Yeah.
I have to look into how to make that work next time, because I don't trust any of this crap anymore.
No.
But when
we'll need an entire day just dedicated to figuring out how to just not go through this process every single time.
And I think when we figured that out, then something else is going to happen. Like the camera is going to die on stream, or something is going to happen. Anyway. Okay. So, we got more things here. Yes, someone asked here, what do you think of the Spadroon? I personally don't really have much of an opinion on it, do you?
No. I mean,
It's a bit later than our focus.
yeah, it seems like a. Yeah, I mean, like it's a cutty thrusty sword, maybe a little bit more thrusty than cutty, but it seems okay. I've never actually held one before, so
Yeah, me
that might
neither.
limit
So
that would limit my.
can't really say too much about it. Okay. What else we got? Yeah, what period in history do each of you like best and why? Uh-oh. Don't tell me he dropped out again.
I'm gonna murder everything.
Okay. You're still there,
back.
right?
Yeah. There was a slip.
I was like, no, we can't be doing this again. Okay. So did you hear the comment? Or question?
No,
Okay.
I did not.
So it was what period in history do each of you like best and why? I'll let you go first.
I like this period right now, to be honest. We've got good medical sciences. Technology's pretty great. Historically, though, I don't know. I guess the height during the Roman Empire was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed like logistics were all right. Living quality could be pretty good depending on your economic status.
Yeah. Yep, that's also what I usually say, what time in history. If you count right now, then you have to go with right now. Yeah, sure. I mean, we have still plenty of problems right now, but compared to history, it's not that bad really in the big picture.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is I can go to a hospital if there's a problem, and then I'll probably get treated.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big bonus, I think.
I mean, sure, a lot of people, especially, the poor have always suffered, and nowadays that's no difference. And also with the shrinking middle class, there are plenty of issues, no doubt about it. And homeless people nowadays are screwed, obviously. But then again, if you were homeless back in the day, you were even more screwed because you got nothing. And, I mean, even less. And there was, like, living conditions were worse. Hygiene. Well, every time I mention, hygiene wasn't as good back then, some people freak out like, oh no, how dare you perpetuate those myths about medieval, dirty people or whatever. I mean, come on. Compared to nowadays, even if it wasn't that bad in particular, like, depending on who, like nobility, for example, in particular times, it's still, compared to nowadays, hygiene was nowhere near the standard that we have now, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, both personal hygiene and particularly also as far as cities is concerned, cities are much cleaner nowadays. So people are not dumping, excrement and corpses in the rivers anymore. Come on.
That's a pretty big bonus.
That's kind of, yeah. I mean, when you walk through the streets, you no longer have to watch out that somebody doesn't dump their nightly excretions on your head. It's kind of an advantage. I don't like to be.
Yeah.
You get
apparently Cody meant during studying, not necessarily living. It's like 1570. That's 15th century, right? Or is that 16th?
1570. That would be 16th.
All right, cool. You can tell I'm knowledgeable about these kinds of particular little details. Yeah, so probably 16th century. I think just straight up, you during that time period, you've got Meyer, you've got Marazzo, some of the Bolognese sources. I think that's some of the king right there.
It would definitely be awesome to be able to travel back in time and talk to these people.
I got a lot of questions.
And, magically being able to communicate with them perfectly despite the language barrier. But, yeah, it would be interesting. Yeah, as far as other time periods in history, I tend to lean towards like Bronze Age, Iron Age, maybe just kind of a little bit of romanticization of that time period because we don't know as much about it, and so that's kind of, you can supplement a little bit, but it's...
Well, I think Richard Marsden was saying that 1600s Italy was basically the most crime-filled time of all time, or like a little bit of hyperbole there, but it was apparently terrible.
Yeah.
Well, it was in Giganti's. Giganti wrote some rapier manuals, and his second one, he says, when fighting multiple opponents, as you often do, blah, 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 blah.
Great.
Yeah, so I think that's a little bit of insight there.
Yeah, it was Middle Ages and Renaissance was not the most comfy of times, to say the least. No.
You cut yourself, you die from infection. The end.
And there are lots of people who want to cut you. That's not helpful.
Exactly. So best sword manufacturer. Someone from Denmark is asking. What's your favorite?
Well, depends if you're talking production or custom. If you're talking production swords, then, well, Albion, obviously. Although, you know, it's kind of Albion / Lockwood because they are very similar, really, in quality. But, custom, you can... the sky is the limit. I don't even know who to mention because there's so many good ones.
Yeah, I'd say if you're talking about sharps, it's hard to top Albion. My experiences with Vladimir Cervenka have been top notch, although your rapier was a little unfortunate in that regard. But you know, his Schiavona and the side sword have been top notch.
Yeah.
In terms of practice stuff, though, hard to say. Black Horse Blades makes the best longswords, period. There's nothing else that can touch that. But on the same time, you've got Castile Armory, who can make some of the best rapiers I've ever held in my life. And they also make pretty good longsword faders as well, and arming sword faders. So Castile goes pretty high up there as well. But in terms of just like a longsword, Black Horse, it's the only way to go. Outside of the price. There's other ways to go there, but...
That's always the problem. If you want the really high-end stuff, you have to pay the high-end money. So
yeah, hey, you want some good stuff? It's expensive. It's just how it goes. Someone else asked, how does HEMA compare to HWMA? So basically, HEMA and historical Western martial arts. So I'm assuming that's kind of, you know, like boxing, pugilism, and all that. I think like HEMA could be incorporated in, you know, historical Western martial arts as well. Lots of people do HEMA for lots of different reasons. You've got guys that really just want to recreate a system as close as they want to. So they'll go like, yeah, I want to, you know, I want to do some of the Lichtenauer stuff. I want to mimic Fiori as much as possible, which then, you know, that's cool. You, that's definitely like the historical aspect of it. And then what we tend to focus on a little bit more is kind of an amalgamation of everything, modern sports sciences, to try and optimize it, stuff like that, which I'd argue is still historical because, you know, our basis is still from the manuscripts. So it's like such a broad question.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, to follow up on the other question, yeah, studying time periods as opposed to living there, that's a different story. So in that case, yeah, I kind of have to say probably Bronze Age. There's a certain fascination that I have for that time period. Well, that and also Paleolithic times are really interesting as well. Again, it's... the further back in time you go, the harder it is because you have no written sources from that time. All you have is archaeological evidence, and it's really tough to, you know, reconstruct an accurate picture of what life is like, even though they have gotten pretty far with that too. And, you know, it's just, it's interesting because it's that much different than later time periods, you know, before cities, you know, before, you know, big permanent settlements, and when people were hunter-gatherers, life was that much different. So it's really everything else that came after it. Of course, there was plenty of change either way, but I think this is one of the major kind of, shifts in human history. Going from hunter-gatherer, nomadic lifestyle to sedentary, to agriculture and cities and all that. Which is also where war started. As far as we can tell, there was no war before that. There wouldn't have been any point to it because there was no demarked territory as such, because people kept moving around anyway. There was, of course, armed conflict every now and then, but not on a large scale. So yeah, pretty interesting.
Someone asks, how many different styles of HEMA fighting are there? A lot. There's a lot of them. If you go, you can go to wiktenauer.com/wiki/masters. I'll just drop that in chat for you real quick. Essentially, that shows you all the masters we know their manuscripts from, and there's quite a few of them. The main ones you see, and I mean, to be fair though, a lot of those is just more like, we've got a manuscript from this guy that shows some stuff, right? Which is not really enough to do anything off of. So you'll have, I'd say, like, in terms of manuscript study, you've kind of got the big three for longsword, which is, Fiore, Lichtenauer, and then Meyer. And then there's still lots of argument within those groups as to, what's what. Because is Lichtenauer actually Lichtenauer? Not really, right? You've got the pseudo von Danzig, you got the Ringak, Dobringer, even more than that, really. But those are the big three that kind of compromises Lichtenauer. And then you've got a whole lot of, people who'll say that Meyer is Lichtenauer as well. Just, not like more developed in the sense that it's gotten better, but like more fleshed out. There's more written about it. Because, I mean, like, there's still a lot of themes in Meyer that are similar to Lichtenauer as well. But I'm not going to get into that argument because I've gone at it with lots of people for hours about
generally
it.
More fleshed out applies to the Renaissance manuals in general, because they were kind of explaining things in a little more detail, and also they could actually draw, which is helpful. The earlier manuals, they don't really show hand position very well, or, for example, the orientation of the blade. When the edge would be facing the viewer, they just show the flat because they didn't draw as well as they did in the Renaissance. So that makes things a little more difficult to see.
Yeah, so Meyer is about 100 years later than some of the Lichtenauer glosses. So 100 years technology-wise during that time period was huge. So yeah, the availability to write, how easy it was to make a manuscript, stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. That is actually a very large topic.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, like, I love to talk about it. It's great. It's just, I'm pretty sure, well, some people might, like the two of them might, but no one wants to sit here and listen to me rant about why Meyer is actually Lichtenauer. That doesn't sound like a good time for most people.
I mean, there's always somebody who enjoys just about everything, but then there's also people who get really angry. Anyway, what else we got?
Someone's asked us about the Chris blade, but I don't know what that is.
Okay, it's an Indonesian type of, well, kind of long dagger with a curved edges, so kind of like a flamed blade.
One of my friends in Portland, I think, got one of those. Oh, that seems pretty cool.
Yep. No, it's interesting. I don't really know anything about the usage. In fact, I'm not even sure if that was ever designed as a martial weapon or if it was more of a ceremonial object. Can't really say.
It's hard to answer a lot of these questions about, like, what do you think of this weapon when I've never held it?
Yes, that's it.
It's like I can look and I go like, well, that looks interesting. It's all I got, really.
Pretty much.
Otherwise, I don't
This is an interesting question. What do you think about the ancient way of sharpening? Now, that's a good question, but at the same time, I don't think we really have anything on that. I mean, there are a few pictures of like these large grinding wheels, these like water-cooled grinding wheels that people were using. But I think that was more for actually grinding the blade rather than just resharpening. And I don't think we have any information on exactly how they sharpen. I mean, obviously with various kinds of natural stones, but exactly how technique-wise, I mean, probably the same way as people hand sharpen nowadays, but who knows?
Yeah, I would probably say my thought about it is that it's obsolete and I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I love history, I really do. But then once in a while, I'm like, yeah, but I could just use a belt sander. That works pretty well, or something like that. I don't know. That's probably like a aggressive way to put it, but I thought it was mildly funny. But there we go. Oh, I keep bumping my microphone. I'm so sorry.
It's not actually that loud, at least on my end.
Oh, nice. Someone was asking what are the normal faders to get in Canada, USA. You got a the Regini is pretty common. Regini or Regenier. It's pretty common. Here we there's a lot. Ensifer tends to be a big one. We tend to get a lot of Ensifer from Jan Chodowicz, Poland. We also Black Horse Blades is pretty common. You'll also see a lot of SGT blades around here and there. There's not too many local stuff. In terms of local guys who make faders, you've got SGT in Canada for us. They make pretty good stuff. In the States, you've got Black Horse, which is the absolute best, but it's quite expensive, so it's kind of rare to stumble upon those. So we tend to import a lot. So the standard, I'd say, is pretty Regenier or Ensifer heavy. I'd say those are the big ones you'll see around here.
Yeah. Okay. What else we got? Have you ever sparred with a... Okay, I don't know exactly how it's pronounced. Killige or Killig or something.
I think it's
like
the Killige
word. Killige, yeah, I think so. No, personally I haven't. Have you ever handled one?
I haven't handled one, but I mean, it's basically just a really, really curved heavy saber.
Pretty much, yeah.
So
similar stuff.
Yeah, I've handled Polish sabers. Yeah, they're pretty good. I like them. They're fun.
Yeah.
So before I started all the Blood and Iron, have you ever watched Deadliest Warrior?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. So Deadliest Warrior is one of my guilty pleasures because I love to watch it and just get really mad the entire time. But so then when they had the Vlad the Impaler episodes, one of the dudes was an actor and knew nothing about Vlad. But then so they had the Killage and they had him actually cut a pig. And this is like the first guy in the entire show who apparently knew how to actually cut things. So he cut through the pig, like how most of the other weapons should have been able to do, but they didn't. And then everyone was losing their minds that the Killage was like the greatest sword of all time because it cut through a pig. I'm like, well, yeah, but like so could have like most of the other ones. It's just this is the first guy who actually maybe knew how to use it.
And that's a really good point. That's what I feel quite often happens when comparing different weapons. Then you're essentially comparing different people's cutting ability and then attributing that to the weapon, which is that's not how it works. I mean, you can take somebody who is like a completely incompetent noob who has never held a sword whatsoever and give him a katana, and then like get like a high-ranking HEMA practitioner with a longsword and be like, here, see, the longsword cuts this much better than the katana. Yeah, well, duh. If the person is more competent using this thing than the other thing, then of course it will seem as if that thing performs better. But, you have to... I mean, it's not easy, of course, when you do these sorts of comparisons. It would actually be better if the same person did the cutting and just with different swords. Even then it can be difficult because different swords are used differently, and You know, that person may be very good with a saber, but not so much with a straight blade. So that's always a bit of a problem. Ideally, they would have a robot who does like the exact same motion over and over again, and then for direct comparison. And I'm pretty sure in that case, you would find that there is nowhere near as much difference as people think. You know, if you've got the same kind of edge on the blade and you've got the same performance, then it's going to be almost identical in result, if not truly identical.
Yeah, fair enough.
Unless you have vastly different blades, of course. Yeah, sure. If you compare like a side sword to a falchion, then yeah, guess what? The falchion is going to cut better. Duh.
Mm-hmm. Could jewel-encrusted swords be used in combat, or would the gems be knocked out of their sockets through impact and use? Well, I mean, theoretically, you could use anything you want. But, yeah, I imagine it would get damaged quite quickly.
Mm-hmm. I think so, too. Now, I'm not actually sure how the gems were set in there. If they're kind of welded in there, then they might actually be fairly sturdy. But then again, I do remember having seen a number of pictures of archaeological finds of swords that already had some of the gems missing, and they were just, as far as we can tell, just placed in that grave, you know, just for the burial, and they already popped out just from time and just being moved at all after a lot of time. So I'd imagine, yeah, they probably wouldn't be terribly sturdy in a fight. If the sword itself is well enough made, then it doesn't really matter if you lose a couple of. Maybe it's even the distraction. Like you parry and like a gem pops out and your opponent goes, "Oh, I gotta scoop that up.
I gotta get that ruby."
He's just running after your precious stuff, and you can strike him down as he bends over. I don't know. That's. Never mind. That's really weird.
I like it. I like that narrative, though. That's a good time.
So, yeah, who knows? Now, of course, if you've got, you know, magical stuff socketed in there, like in Diablo, then, you know, put that ruby in there for some life leech and stuff. What else we got?
Is it possible to use two bucklers as weapons?
What was it?
Is it possible to use two bucklers as weapons?
Oh yeah, I've done the dual shield thing. It just doesn't really make sense over a weapon in the main hand.
At the same time, if you want to screw around with people, it's a good time.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it also depends on what you're going up against. If you're up against someone with a dagger and you use two bucklers, then okay, that might actually kind of work. But if they have a long sword, then yeah, just go home. You're not gonna have a good time.
Yeah,
because your reach is essentially none. I mean, it's punching reach. That's it. So
now that being said, you clock them in the head with a buckler. That also tends to work pretty well.
Well, yeah, sure. If you can get there, if you can get close enough without getting cut or stabbed in the process, then sure.
Someone asked us earlier, for fencing, is it better to have an empty offhand for options or a dagger for extra weapons?
That's a
good question, actually. Yeah. So for Rapier and Dagger, a very, very, very popular concept was the Rapier and Dagger, obviously. But yeah, for other single-handed weapons, you don't really see it because of how much more prevalent in grappling they are. I think the length of the weapon plays a huge part in it. Because if you've got a super long weapon like the Rapier, then you've got distance management. Maybe that dagger for a little bit of extra control tends to work out well. But when you're with a messer, being able to grapple someone to nullify their weapon arm, it tends to keep you safer than just being able to sometimes stab them. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, that being said, you know, if I had a messer, you know, I get in close and I just stab them in the head or the neck, then that also works well for me, right? So
yes.
I don't know. It's
And I
hard
mean,
to say.
if need be, you can always drop it if you absolutely need to grapple. So you could argue that having it is better than not having it. It's kind of, it's of course a bit personal preference. Now I'm not sure how well a dagger would work with messer techniques. I mean, you tend to be fairly close with a messer, so it's, yeah, like you said, it lends itself to that to an extent.
Yeah, it's hard to say. And I mean, especially because, again, trying to draw back the whole historical thing, if you look at manuscripts, they show things very specifically. Although I think, there's one source I think that showed dual falchion or dual messer or something.
Yeah.
But, yeah, very often if you see like a single-handed, it's either a shield or nothing. And then once you start getting into later period, that's when you see like the dagger and all that. Although once again, who knows? It could be an economic thing. If you've got a dude who can afford a rapier, you could probably afford a dagger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then if you've got a sharpened messer, which is more of like a big knife, maybe you can't afford a nice dagger. Who knows? Who knows? I think if I had messer though, I would prefer just having my offhand, because I would much prefer to be able to control the arm, as opposed to just kind of stabbing them, which it'll work, but then still leaves a little bit of time to for them to maybe get the point online or something.
I just saw another good question here. If I have no HEMA club around, should I keep practicing with my friends or wait for a while to prevent some bad habits? Well, if you say wait for a while, I mean, if you have a suspicion that there might be a HEMA club soon, like if you heard that somebody has plans of starting a HEMA school there, then yeah, absolutely, in that case, I would suggest to wait. If there's absolutely nothing there, then what can you do? You might as well try to get into it with your friends. But if you do, please get protective gear. This is very important. There are way too many people who just jump into it, just do sparring right away, and get injured because, well, it's dangerous to do it. Well, there's a certain risk to doing it even with protective gear, let alone without. At the very least, you need a fencing mask. That's like the #1 priority. Second is gloves. That's also extremely important.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to shamelessly plug, but the Blood and Iron channel does have a video specifically about how to start your own HEMA club. So if that's something you want to do, check that out.
Absolutely. I'll put the link in the description of the final recorded version. And yeah,
I could probably also just try and drop it in chat right now. Someone, Luke, I think, keeps asking about hanger swords, and I'm sorry to keep ignoring it. Do you know what a hanger sword is?
Yeah, it's a type of saber, isn't it? I don't know much about it, so it's not really... I tend to kind of sort of ignore everything past the Renaissance, because it doesn't, like, more modern military sabers and things like that don't really interest me a whole lot, I have to say. So it's not... I have quite a gap there, so can't really say much.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I like sparring with saber. I think saber is very fun to spar with. You can get some fun exchanges out of them. But yeah, I mean, it looks fine. It looks like a nice cutty saber, which is always a good time. So yeah, it looks fun.
Yeah.
Once again, it's one of those cases where I've never held it, so it's hard to give an opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely prefer Polish saber, for example, over some of the later stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. It's more fun.
Okay, what else we got?
Would there be any benefit to having a falchion, having a hand-and-a-half handle, or a two-handed handle, increasing the sword's length as well? Would that change the falchion to something else? Yeah. I mean, a lot of falchions or messers, falchion and messer tends to be fairly interchangeable to a certain point. And they do have, sometimes you'd see them with longer handles, but similar blade length. And if you just make the whole thing bigger. You can, I mean, the Messer is a good example for that. You got the Kriegmesser, which is just, you know, the war knife, two-handed knife.
It also depends on what you call a falchion. The word is, it seems to be applied to a lot of things. For example, if I can actually type here, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So Locutioner is a Messer source, but at the very same time, he refers to it as falchion sometimes. So
yeah, so this thing, for example, is sometimes called a falchion. Now, personally, I don't agree with calling this a falchion, but it is sometimes, and this is, you know, two-handed. So it's more, I would just call it a chopper, like that. This is what it's often called. I mean, chopper is, of course,
piece of steel on a handle. Got it.
Yeah, chopper is a very, very vague generic term, but I don't think it's that much of a falchion necessarily. But I think some falchions have handles long enough that you can use them with two hands, or you can at the very least grip the pommel. The one that I have also allows that. Now it's doesn't have the same blade length as a dedicated two-handed weapon, but yeah, sure, it could be done. It could, at that point. Yeah, it's kind of like a two-handed Messer at that point. Pretty similar. Can certainly be done. Oh, wait, not this. Here. Okay, do we have anything more here? Nope.
All right, well, I think I might as well plug the charity stuff that's going on down there again, because it's been about an hour. So I'm Julian. Basically, what we're doing is bringing awareness to a charity event that's going on in HEMA. What it is it's a HEMA charity event. So all the funds and all that go towards Streetlight USA, which is a charity organization that helps rehabilitate victims of child sex trafficking, a pretty noble cause. So what we're doing is we're going to send our head instructor down with as much of a charity drive as possible. And basically all proceeds go directly towards the charity itself. If you would like to help donate, there are two ways to do that. You can donate directly right here in chat, which I'm going to drop that. And alternatively, you can do the super chat. However, the problem is that then YouTube takes 50% of that, but we get to answer your questions. So
yeah. So if you want to put 100% toward the charity, it's best to go through that link. And super chat, yeah, as said, I'll put the remaining 50% after YouTube takes their cut, their rip-off. I'll put that toward the charity. But yeah, it's only going to be 50% because YouTube.
Yeah. So with the charity, Lee is taking all expenses on himself. So the flight, logistics, and all that, that's on him. So all money donated does go directly to the charity, as well as all prizes that he could possibly win, which is likely. He tends to do that fairly well. All the prizes are going to be raffled off, and all proceeds towards that are going to go to the charity as well. So yeah, if you'd like to help support a moderately fairly noble cause, I dropped the link down in chat. There we go.
Yep, and it'll also be in the video description, so you can check that. All right. And what else we got here? Someone was asking if we've tried the HEMA Kevlar gloves from Superior Fencing. I haven't. Have you?
No. The HEMA Kevlar gloves.
Let's see, Superior Fencing. Kevlar gloves.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those. So those are actually, yeah, I've handled some of them. They're pretty good for, I'd say, Rapier if you're doing a lot of cut-centric stuff.
Right, these.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I forgot that they're made by Superior Fencing. I actually have a pair of those, and I don't know. I've not really used them because they are extremely stiff. I mean, sure, they should break in. But
you do have to break them in pretty pretty hard. But yeah, they're very good. Yeah, if you're doing a lot of cuts with Rapier, it's pretty good for that. So because it does add a little bit of extra protection, but I really wouldn't use them for anything else. If you're maybe doing some very, very, very light slow work with contact, with like some like long swords or something, then maybe it could be okay. But otherwise, I really, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. In general, any kind of fingered design is usually can't really be recommended for heavy sparring with particularly long swords because there are, well, lots of problems. You get the fingers isolated, so any kind of strike on there is, just the individual finger is going to absorb that. Now, I should probably point out that the Pro Gauntlet should hopefully be the exception to that rule because it is very well designed from what I've seen. Now, where everybody's waiting for that. The entire HEMA community pretty much is waiting for that. Yeah. So that may be an exception to the rule. But so far, what is on the market currently, I would generally suggest staying away from fingered ones for heavier sparring. And then get like the Spez heavy gauntlets, for example.
Mm-hmm. You do have the Koning gloves, which we find just don't protect a full power shot well enough.
Yeah.
There's the Thok gloves that are coming out soon, I think. Those look interesting. Definitely, maybe some promising aspects there. But anyway, essentially what's happening is a bunch of our guys are going to be getting some, so hopefully we'll be able to have an idea if those are good or not soon. So someone actually donated in the GoFundMe with a question there, so I'm going to read that out loud. What is your opinion on Fiori? I've heard many things about him, including the internet hates him. My actual Fiori HEMA instructors, they also dispelled some things like blocking with the edge of the blade is bad. He says that a katana's thing because a katana thing because Europe had mega cheap steel. Also, exaggerated stance are horrible. When they said stances is fine, it's the exaggerated strikes that are bad. I'd really like your opinion on these things. Who Fiori is and why do people hate him? Is he good or bad? To the questions and what my instructor said. So, Fiori is an interesting source because he's one of the earliest period longsword sources we have in general. So a lot of the things you'll see in there can be limited. You've got schools like the Phoenix Society, Richard Marsden, John Patterson, Cal Griswold, who have done phenomenal things with the Fiori system and have done very well with them. But I wouldn't say Fiori is intrinsically bad. I would just say it's way harder to come up with a competent system that'll work under duress with them as opposed to some of the other ones. Because of just how... I don't want to say he describes less, but it's different. He's got a very grapple-heavy approach sometimes. And yeah, it is earlier. So maybe a bit more primitive, but not. It's hard because I want to say primitive, but then that's insulting in a way because it's not. I don't mean it as an insulting way, but you can still definitely do a lot. You can do a lot with Fiori. So definitely, I'd say it's a solid source. People have done great things with him. Yeah. Exaggerated stances or exaggerated strikes. I'd say anything exaggerated is not great. It depends. It depends. Your definition of exaggerated versus my definition of exaggerated might be completely different. So that could be hard. I'd say as long, you can do what you want as long as it's still in good biomechanical structure, and then you can make it work under duress. If you fit those two criteria, then I'd say that's it. It works pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, the making it work under duress seems quite challenging for some of the grappling techniques in particular. But of course, there's always a realization that some of the stuff just may take a whole lot of practice. Sometimes people look at some of the techniques and go, there's no way you can pull that off. Well, if you haven't practiced it enough, then of course you're not going to be able to pull it off. Some of the things, I mean, Fiori, I think Fiori was really the only one of the sources who was at least likely a knight. The other ones were commoners, so he has some fairly advanced stuff in some ways, and it's likely that he dedicated a lot of his time to training. At least that's what I would assume. So
I will fully admit that my history knowledge is a little spotty, but I'm pretty sure there are sources that say the dude did survive multiple judicial duels. So obviously he knew what he was doing. It's hard. It's really hard. I'd say if you really want to do Fiori, the best possible approach is you go through Fiori, but then you also go through other sources to find concepts that are similar to try and apply back to Fiori. I'd say that's one of the better ways to do it.
That's always a good idea, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That being said, Fiori's boar tooth, so where very often we refer to it as kind of like the dirt shoveling guard. Did Eric ever show you that one? It's where it's tucked in to the side. You step out and then you smash the crap out of their strike with your back edge, and then you just come right back down.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that one a lot, actually. Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite plays that I do make work fairly frequently on top of German stuff. So yeah, there's definitely plenty of good stuff in Fiori. It just depends how you apply it. With Fiori, I think it's also fairly easy to get really caught up on the illustrations and go, no, it has to be done this way because this is what the illustration shows. And I mean, like, yes, but at the same time, keep in mind how old those illustrations are. So there's probably definitely degrees of moving things around. Exact guard positions can probably move around a little bit. Mm-hmm. Again, the big two factors is make sure you have good biomechanical knowledge and understanding of the positions, and you can make it work under duress. If you can make that work, then you're good, really. I think that's what really matters at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Quick answer here. What do you think about the Knaut, aka the Kukri 2.0, like Yark Sprave reviewed a little while back? I have no idea. I haven't seen that, so guess I just haven't seen the video.
I'm gonna Google that real quick. Yep. See what I think. Again, I can tell you right now that I have not handled. Ooh. I like that. That looks like fun. It's just a huge blade.
Let's see here. Oh, there it is. Wow. Yeah, that's a big one.
I like it.
That is humongous.
Oh, hold on. I'm just, again, in case, I'm going to drop that in chat, just in case no one knows what's going on with that. Good Lord. That's incredible. Oh, and it says page not found. Hold on. There we go. Hopefully that works. There we go. This is a big, chunky, meaty blade. I'd pick one of those up. That looks like fun. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll start carrying that around in transit and then get arrested in 5 seconds.
Yes. Oh, here's a good question. Rapier or side sword in a serious duel in which the opponent will have an undecided one-hander? Personally, I think I'd go for a side sword simply because it's a cut and thrust blade, so it's a little more versatile. And, of course, also because I haven't trained Rapier as much, so that's personal reasons as well. But it just seems like if you don't know what you're up against, then it might be better to have something that can do cutting a little better, just in case. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely having a point on there is, yeah. Options are good, but at the same time, when you see something like that, it's very specialized for what it does. And then just seems like a good time. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say sometimes.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you, in a duel side sword versus Rapier, which would have the advantage. I mean, Rapier obviously has the reach advantage, but side sword can cut better and has more blade presence. So that's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know. I think both are really good. You know, on a one-on-one duel, Rapier wins. You got that range. You've got the ability to disengage. You can stab them. You're good to go. But against multiple people, I'd pick a side sword over Rapier any day.
And I think, well, if you're going Rapier against a heavier, more cutting-oriented sword, then this could be quite dangerous for both, because the person with a heavier sword is pretty vulnerable to quick thrusts, but since thrusts are not really They
There's
aren't
no stopping power.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going at. They don't really have any stopping power, so you could run someone through and they might still cut your head off right after. So it's quite dangerous for both. So there's that.
I can't get over that knife, man. How much do those cost? Because it's so ridiculous. I like it.
Yeah, that's definitely his style. Okay, that's an unusual question. Let me just bring that up here.
Was that the food
For
one?
dual, empty stomach or full? Huh.
So when you say full, are we talking about completely bloated to the point?
Does that
like,
one be good?
You have crammed as much food as your stomach is willing to expand to, or empty? I don't know, man.
I think the question here is glycogen stores full or not? Because if you're kind of starved and then you don't have enough energy to fight efficiently, then you're screwed. But if you're overstuffed and are just really, you've just eaten a huge meal, that might be not so good.
Yeah, you need that ATP, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say like if we're talking about like full bloated meal or empty, I'd probably still rather be full. Just because then I'll have the energy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, depends on a lot of factors. If you had if you had a protein shake before that had some liquid calories, they're going to pass through pretty quickly. So then you have energy, but you don't have a really full stomach, at least not for long. So, I don't know. But yeah, if it's like an opulent meal that sits heavy in the stomach, then that could be a problem for sure. Could make you sluggish a little bit. But yeah, that was definitely an unusual question.
Drop stuff. That's terrible. Yeah.
If you're too full, you can puke at your enemy as a distraction.
That is something I thought about a little bit. Is if I gotta get rid of some, then it'll happen, right?
Yeah.
That also might make them less willing to grapple me, and this would give me an advantage.
Yeah, you can do you can go the fly and just grab them and just vomit stomach acid all over them, try to dissolve them.
That's the way to go, buddy.
That is gross. Okay, here's another one. Suggestions for axe manuals, two-hand and single. I know two-hand shares a lot of quarterstaff with hooking and momentum conservation, but single just seems to be you're boned without a shield.
So I do have a really good answer for that. So for axe manuals, they don't exist. However, what does exist is I'll slowly type in so the thunderous keystrokes don't work. But I'm the king of bad links. Does it just not work? All right, well, okay. I'm just never going to drop anything in chat ever again. But okay, so essentially what's going on is there is a book that was written by a combat specialist, which he does tomahawk stuff. So he's got fully illustrated books about creating a system with tomahawk and bowie. Now, the tomahawk stuff, he's taken a lot of interpretation stuff from, Native American war dances, which is, preservation of war culture in a sense of that, and stuff like that. So basically, that is the best option you have if you want to learn anything axe stuff. And again, the selfless promotion, but we'll be posting something about that soon on the Blood and Iron YouTube channel. We've got a book review for that on the way. It's an excellent book. I'm gonna find it on Amazon real quick. Do you want to add anything to that while I mute my microphone so the thunderous keystrokes don't go?
Well, single hand, as you said, there is nothing really. There is, well, if you want to count pole axe, then if you want to count that as a two-handed axe, then there are some sources on that. Otherwise, yeah, not so much. And as far as axe without a shield is concerned, depends on what you're going up against. But yeah, I would say generally axe and shield is... I would almost call the shield mandatory unless you're talking like a context, like for example, knife and tomahawk, things like that. Then that's a different story. But if the opponent has a longer weapon, like a, whatever, a sword, or well, if they've got a polearm and you've got only a single hand axe without a shield, then you're kind of screwed, because axes, you can parry with them, just not quite as easily as with a sword. There are some other things that axes allow you to do, like hook the opponent's weapon and control it that way, of course. But defense is not necessarily the strong side of an axe, so shield is almost mandatory, I'd say. Or at least a buckler. Although axe and buckler, I don't think I've ever seen that. That's kind of an odd combination, except maybe some Indian stuff. I think I've seen some.
Yeah, so I dropped. Hopefully I'm not the king of bad links anymore. But I dropped basically it's the Fighting Tomahawk Volume 2: Further Studies in the Combat Use of the Early American Tomahawk, and absolutely the best book you can find about axe fighting, without a doubt. The guy who wrote it is a really solid martial artist. Lee and Nicole have, they've met him a long time ago, and he's an ass kicker. So absolutely, I would highly recommend that one.
Nice. Okay.
So that, yeah, and then there was the halberds. I don't consider a halberd an axe. It's a
not really, no.
You've got things like the bardiche, but as far as I know, there is no source on things like that. So hard to say sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a French manual on the pole axe that actually calls it an axe, but it's not. I mean, the pole axe is kind of in between. It's kind of in between two-handed axe and polearm, because it's not as long as a halberd, for example. So you could maybe call that an axe.
Yeah, but I mean, that being said, if you know how to use a two-handed sword or a one-handed sword, you will know how to use an axe.
Yeah.
Julian is pissed off that this is not accurate. I'm
No.
I'm a very passionate, ornery individual. Yeah. How good a weapon would a machete actually be? Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
There are actually some. It can hit pretty hard. There's lots of photos out there of machete attacks and what they can do to people. So yeah, works pretty good.
Yeah, there are some machete fighting styles. I saw something. I don't remember exactly where. Was it? South Africa? I think it might have been.
There was a machete scare on our transit system a few months ago, actually.
Huh.
There was a dude running around on the platform with a machete.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, so definitely is applicable as a weapon, and there are a few martial arts styles that use it. So.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest issue I would have with it is the hand protection would be a little scary.
Yes. Okay. There's sources on double-edged axes, not as far as I know. Never seen anything. I mean, there are not that many double-bitted axes, at least as weapons in history overall. They're more often used in forestry. So, any good short spear manuals? Again, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, if you want to learn spear, your best bet is to look at anything that has pole arms in it. and then apply thrusts with that. So Meyer is actually a pretty decent place to start because it's got quarterstaff, halberd, and pike, and you can pretty quickly figure out a good system with spear, which is something I've done, and I'm hoping to bring that over to you guys in a little bit. Hoping to come out for a visit in March or something. But.
Yes, you totally should. Otherwise, we'll kidnap you.
That's true. It's true. I have heard this threat many times. How hard is it to deflect parry with a two-hander? It's pretty easy. You got a lot of leverage on there.
Yes. Leverage and mass.
Yeah. Two-handers seem to be kind of... Yeah. You got a lot of options with them.
Okay. I'm just going to check the super chat again. Okay, nothing new. I think we can probably come to an end here because we've been at it for quite a while, almost 2 hours, I think.
Cool. Sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like a thought did occur to me. Maybe give time for maybe a little last questions or whatnot. But something that's worked out with me is I've been working on a lot of Messer recently, and what's interesting is that a lot of the technical devices, such as Mutirin, Duplirin, or a lot of the handwork techniques that they talk about, I find are infinitely better, easier to do with a single-handed than they are with a longsword. Like I can get a strong bind to Mutirin. So Mutirin is where you mutate a cut to a thrust, and it shows up in a lot of manuscripts, and it's it's good handwork stuff. I've been able to do that with the Messer so many times, but with the longsword, I've only been able to make it twice. So I think that extra leverage with the two hands really does help protect yourself from a lot of handwork type stuff.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Just a little thought that I had that I thought I might as well share.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, there are of course always more questions, but if we just keep answering them, we'll be here until Armageddon.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, thanks for doing the video with me, Julian, and supporting the charity and all that. And thanks everybody who did donate to the charity or is planning to. As said, it's all going to be in the video description in the final edited version. Or recorded, whatever. And yeah, I hope you had some fun with us here and maybe got some bit of information out of it. All of that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, any donation amount helps. It is a charity to help end child sex trafficking, which I think is, that's pretty important in the grand scheme of things.
That's a very good
if you're interested in doing that at all, I just dropped a link in chat. And there we go. Thanks everyone who helped donate. Thank you for having me. And yeah.
Yep.
Shameless plugs. I'm on the Blood and Iron YouTube channel quite a bit as well. I'm the editor for that. I help a lot with that. If you want to learn more about sword fighting, come check us out. But then if you were to pick between checking out that GoFundMe page or checking out our YouTube link, check out the GoFundMe page because that's a bit more important. That's why I'm here.
But you don't really have to pick. You can just check out both. So
check out both.
Go there. Do it now.
Why not both?
Yes.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. Oh, yeah. Thank everybody for coming by. I enjoyed answering questions.
Yep.
Etc. Etc.
All right. Thanks, Julian. Thanks, everybody else. And have a good one. And let's